All right, welcome to the Middle Ages, Chapter 5. So, we're going to talk about the years from about 900 to 1400 today. I hope you enjoyed last week. I didn't give you a lecture. I was hoping to allow some people to catch up after exam one. If you, I'm still missing exam one from quite a few of you. If you haven't turned that in, please reach out to me immediately. Let's get that taken care of because that will put a huge dent in your grade and it's a relatively quick and easy thing to do, anyways. Um, so today I'm coming from you or talking to you from my wife's apartment. I told you guys before she's doing COVID relief, so they send her wherever it's bad here in Texas, and then she takes care of things. So I get to come visit her on Wednesdays. So I'm recording from her apartment. I'm currently in New Braunfels. You may or may not be able to see, but the river behind me is extremely blue. That's what they're proud of. So it's like a vacation spot for Texans, I guess. But anyways, here we go with today's lecture. So basically, we're picking up where we left off, right? So the Roman Empire has fallen, and basically what happened once Rome fell in 476 AD was this whole European region kind of falls into a period of uncertainty. So everyone's scrambling to figure out what to do because we had this massive, well structured civilization that has collapsed and it's created this void. Now, without the structure, all these city states that made up Rome and all the different people groups that Rome had kind of put under one umbrella are now struggling and clawing for their influence within the region. And what this meant was rather than one unified part of Europe and that part of the world, it's now a, a very ununified. So rather than communicating and sharing their scientific developments, their inventions, everyone's just kind of keeping to themselves and utilizing it to build up their group. And that's why it's kind of called the Dark Ages. And we'll talk in a minute why some historians are now kind of moving away from the term Dark Ages. But in the Dark Ages kind of led to what's called the Middle Ages. So after 900 AD to the Italian Renaissance, the 14th century, that's the medieval period or the Middle Ages. So we don't know a ton about the Dark Ages because in this void, no one was really focusing on recording what was going on as well. And it's kind of this period of time where after Rome was so well documented and the Middle Ages began documented, and then once you get to the Renaissance, things are really, really documented again. But in this period from 476 AD to 900 AD, we only get a glimpse of what was going on and really don't know a ton about that period. But in the Middle Ages, the view of sport varied wildly. You have all these different groups, all these different things going on. So you had a lot of things that had to do with war, just like every other culture we've talked about. So in this point, we're thinking more of like knights and crusaders. So a lot of the sport was this athletic competition, knights, the preparation for the crusades with battle games that would help prepare for battle. And then you also have the ascetic views of the monks. Now, what this meant is ascetic views were very much kind of a view of abstaining from things that were considered fun to focus on religious aspects of their life. So these monks would very much be focused on recording biblical history and working on their faith a lot more than necessarily playing games or sport. So during the Dark Ages, or now it's kind of called the Migration Period, so the Dark Ages is kind of being moved away from by historians because they think it kind of incorrectly portrays the time period as one where that's dark, as in more evil rather than dark, as in lack of information. Um, and in reality, there was a lot of good things happening in the Dark Ages. And once you focus less on Europe and you look at um, like like things that were going on in the East and Asia and India, of course, part of from the Far East to the Middle East to even Africa, you're having a lot going on that was really important. But from this like European centric viewpoint, it was dark and quiet and not much happening to benefit the world as a whole. Rather, everyone was kind of struggling against one another, fighting this period of poverty and hopes to kind of gain control and unify under them rather than someone else. So, within this chaos, all the people are now fleeing cities, and instead they're going places where they can be protected. If they have a promise of protection, the normal person can kind of be under someone who's in a feud with someone else, but they can get the protection from this more powerful individual, then they were going for that. So everyone was really looking for just some security, some predictability in a time of chaos. Um, like I was saying, Rome had this, amazing. We talked about how they really focused on building their society, building a civilization, having trade, and being a public. Everything run through this public aspect of Rome. Now, once that disappeared, a lot of the commerce and trade between all these groups disappeared also. Again, just more fuel on the fire of chaos here. So, within this period, everything has split down into kingdoms, almost like tribal societies. So now a lot of what remains is like castles and stonework, as you see in these pictures from that period of time. It's probably worth noting we kind of have this glamorous view of castles. They were probably more likely to be damp, musty places than necessarily these beautiful, palaces that we think of in like movies. But as you see, like, doesn't necessarily look like a place that wouldn't end up being really musty. But it is cool architecture, and it was even within a period of time where people weren't working together, they were able to build something where they were. Everyone's now kind of in this feudalistic point, battling each other. But you have castles and walled cities to just kind of keep out invaders, protect the group, and move from there. One thing that was pretty actually unified within Europe at this time is the impact of Christianity. So you had Judaism, and then Islam kind of appeared within this time also and was beginning to spread. But Christianity was by far the main religion. And this was what many of these societies were kind of clinging to as a unifying factor. So, as we talked about in Rome, at the end of Rome, the Christian church was major and powerful. And this was the only thing that was left within Rome, was the Christian church. So they were a point of stability and order amidst fear. They were what was holding things together from just complete and utter chaos. Which was, you could argue whether it's a good or bad thing, but I think at that point in time, having Christianity as a unifying factor was good. And I mean, obviously, here at Montreat, we believe similar things as they did then. So it's a good unifier within that period of time from just holding things back from utter chaos. Christianity, of course, was also spreading. That's part of what we're called to do, is to spread the gospel. So you're seeing Christianity spreading throughout Europe during this period of time. Now, the impact of this is you see a lot of the philosophical components of the Middle and Dark Ages came from Christianity. So the theology of the church. So from an epistemology standpoint, it was very much based on that absolute faith and belief in the certainty of divine revelation, that God directly reveals truth through prayer and scripture. So a lot of the philosophies of the day were coming from scripture and from prayer and Christian interaction with God. And what was so appealing to a lot of people in the Middle and Dark Ages, and I think we can, in many ways, understand this, is this promise of heaven for those who follow the teachings of Christ. And so this is kind of what's holding things together, is this unified belief, this same philosophy that's kind of springing out from theology. Now, these medieval and the Middle Ages philosophers really didn't have much access to literary sources. This is before the printing press, when you could just relatively easily manufacture lots of a text, but instead you're having just a few people who can read and write and spread Greek works, and the works of like Plato and Aristotle were very crucial in this time. So, as you can imagine, as people are viewing Christian text who are new to Christianity in a culture where Christianity is spreading, the lens kind of came through a lot of Greek and Roman influence. That was kind of the lens that they were looking. So you see some really, I would say, parallel understandings between Greek and Roman philosophy and Christian theology. And it's this like existence of the soul, the personification of belief in God, and the nature of being, and a system of ethics. And it's all kind of aligns, which is a very interesting thing, that you kind of see how Christianity interacts with society, and society is interacting with Christianity from even these early stages of the spread of Christianity. So within Greek philosophy, so you have a lot of the Christian theologians are trying to kind of mix philosophy and theology. So theology is the study of like religious study, whereas philosophy is the study of thought and reason and how we understand things. So Christian theologians were working to kind of mix the two, to kind of have this easier understanding of the Bible through ways that make sense to a culture that's very dependent on philosophy at this point, as most cultures have been throughout time. So you start to see explanations for that support theological beliefs through philosophical means. So using philosophy to come to tracking philosophy to come to the point where it's like, yes, there is a God, and what that means through thought. So you have people that you might have heard of even today or studied, Augustine, Anselm, Aquinas, etc. And I'll talk about Aquinas here in a minute as an example, but you may have heard these terms within your church, and understanding the theology and reasoning your way through the Bible to understand the concepts does require a certain level of philosophical thought. So, and it's interesting because if you look at like when Christ came, it kind of put this intersection of all time of all these things that were going on. Christianity felt kind of right in the intersection. So like Jerusalem is really focused on God and the Old Testament. So you see that in the New Testament. You have the Greeks who are studying science, philosophy, and the search for truth. and Christ comes and gives truth and reveals truth from the Old Testament. So you're kind of amplifying what was happening in Jerusalem through, and also amplifying what's happening with the Greeks. And then with the Romans, you have explanations of law and social structures. So Christ kind of was able to unify and answer these questions coming from multiple cultures and multiple civilizations, which is kind of a cool thing. It aligns with time and Christ aligned, which would make sense if you are a believer in Christ. So as for the body, you have the biblical Jesus, who's obviously perfect, body, mind, soul, completely perfection. So these philosophical concepts of body that were happening within the Middle Ages spring from theology. So God created the universe, man, woman, mind, body. If God created it, then that's an implication that the body and the soul were good. So the body was viewed as a positive thing, and now you're thinking of, okay, the soul and the body are two separate things, but they're combined as part of the human experience. Both are good, and we need to understand them. So you have the Christian concepts of the body emerge. You have the Orthodox, who rejected that the body was evil, which was a big step. The Christian concept of the body is kind of, again, merging Orthodox theology and Greek philosophy. One of the big things that came through within the Middle Ages that was very influential to the philosophy and the theology of these people was the bubonic plague. When the plague swept through, millions were dying. The church is like, well, the plague must be a sign from God. And the body was kind of seen as this messenger of death. So the body died, and it was a signal of death and negative things traveling. So, and because of this, you had a lot of people who were Christians start to question their faith, to question what it meant to be a human within the body, because they had the big questions that we struggle with now. Why would a good God let a plague come through and kill millions? It's the same questions we grapple with today. So one of the people I told you about was Thomas Aquinas. He lived from 1225 to 1274. And his argument was that physical fitness is a great thing because it promotes well-being. It's a way to step back from the stresses of life and relax, to socialize with others, to kind of have this human experience in a way that's joyful. And it makes sense, right? Because it's the same thing we do now. A lot of you are in sports, especially within an exercise science program. You go and exercise and you feel better, or you go see your friends and you compete in your sport, and it's something that you really feel good about and joyful about. And Aquinas argued that this is a great thing, even if we're trying to serve God. It's good to step back and kind of enjoy this creation of his, the body. He also kind of follows along with some of the Greek and Roman philosophy that though the mind, it was superior to the body. Again, and we've been tracking throughout this semester so far how a civilization views mind versus body, which is more important. Well, we still have the mind is more important than the body, but the body is crucial for delivering information to the mind and helping us experience what's around us. Without the body, Aquinas would say the mind couldn't understand what was going on around it. So, like I said, he kind of agrees with Aristotle that You kind of, body and soul are mixed together. The soul needs a body to acquire knowledge, just like I was saying. So some of these other scholastics were among the first to establish philosophical and religious justification for the body. Um, they value physical fitness and recreation for physical, mental, social, moral well-being. Um, they argued kind of the same things we still do today, where God's omnipresent, he's everywhere, so therefore he's also part of the body, which was part of what was used to kind of dispel this idea that the body was a messenger of death, because if God is omnipresent and within the body and part of the body, um, then God is the body itself can't be a messenger of death. It can't be a messenger of a sinful an evil part of the world, right? Um, so so the body was therefore a good thing. So you also have like Saint Bonaventure, more than just a school that sometimes makes its appearance in March Madness, but up in New York. But it's named after Saint Bonaventure, was a scholastic who, again, was arguing that the body is not a prison for the soul. It's not just something that traps the soul until death, but instead, like this companion that travels with the soul throughout human life. Um, and then an individual has to exist as both a union of body and soul. So you also have, I apologize, this is one that I forgot to look up how to pronounce, but Maimonides, again, I apologize, but a Jewish physician, and he said that nothing is more useful for the preservation of health than physical exercise. So this is a great thing that we see, this idea that exercise is good for overall health, both social, psychological, physical health is good because of exercise. All right, so